Yes, hello. Thank you for being here, for the invitation. As was said, we are working together with g.tec and Symptoma on a European Union funded project, the MindCare project, which aims for detecting dementia at a very early stage. And this session will be split in three parts, starting with me with the algorithm of EEG analysis. We moved on to a decision support tool presented, and in the end, we will see the hardware in this project as well. But I will start with the presentation about AI-driven algorithms that analyze the EEG for the signs of dementia and how we build it up and what was actually the goal. My name is Lukas Lechner. I'm from Vienna, from the Austrian Institute of Technology. I'm a research engineer here and especially working on the algorithm part. So giving a bit of an introduction to dementia itself. Dementia is not a disease itself, but it is a collective term for cognitive impairment, meaning that it is combined in a loss of cognitive function, and it is actually for a long time undetected in the subjects. There is a bit of a normal decline in the cognitive function with age. However, when you suffer from dementia, at some point the decline is more rapid and leads to early stages, which are defined as the combined term mild cognitive impairment, where you see already a cognitive decline, but it is an early stage of dementia. Alzheimer's disease is very commonly known since it is the most common form of dementia in the Western part and accounts to about 70% of all the dementia cases in Europe and Western regions. Dementia itself is not curable, but it is treatable, and for this it is very important to actually detect it quite early so that you can start the treatment and hinder the cognitive decline. So dementia is the fifth leading cause of death among subjects or among people above the age of 65, and its prevalence increases dramatically with the age. And you can see here in the graphics that for above 90-year-olds, it's already at 40%. The WHO estimates that currently about 55 million people are suffering from dementia. And it will increase dramatically due to the aging population to around 140 million people in 2050. But there is quite a dark number on there since the diagnostics is very tricky. There is no gold standard for diagnosing dementia. But there are several ways that can be done. For example, it starts with a cognitive test. Some subtests of this cognitive test are known because or very well known with these clock drawing test that is shown here. But it also includes MRI or PET scans and laboratory tests where the spinal fluid or the blood is tested. The diagnostic procedure is quite expensive or invasive. And it is not really suitable for a very regular test to already detect the early stages of dementia. And so these tests are typically done when the signs are already visible. And as I showed before, when you see the signs, the cognitive decline is already quite progressed. So our idea in this project is that we use EEG data to assess a regular dementia check. The EEG is perfectly suited here because it is very cheap, it is non-invasive, and it is commonly available even in rural regions or developing countries. The check setup involves a yearly check from non-specialized doctors with a short-term EEG recording that is automatically analyzed by an AI-based algorithms for dementia risks. including a digital cognitive test with a decision support system. And once you can see early signs of dementia in these EEG regions, then you can start the treatment early and hopefully reduce the cognitive decline of subjects with dementia. But going into the algorithm part, what are the signs that we are looking for when we analyze the EEG? So dementia is affecting the EEG in slowing the alpha rhythm. It also has a higher theta and a higher delta activity in the frequency bands of the EEG. And when you see these frequency bands, that basically means you see a general slowing of the EEG. So slower frequency waves are actually enhanced, and the alpha rhythm is reduced in frequency. What is also shown is that you reduce the cognitive functionality of the EEG, and this is visualized on the bottom here with a reduced functional connectivity. So these signs you can analyze with a classical statistical analysis of the EEG itself. However, when you do that, you can immediately see that the dementia sign actually is affecting, for example, here shown in this diagram, the delta activity. And you can clearly see that that we have an increase of delta activity for severe dementia subjects. However, this is also exactly the challenge when you want to go to an individual basis and diagnose individual subject. You can immediately see that there is a large overlap, especially of the early dementia and the mild cognitive impairment with the control group. And there are very problematic outliers, which reduces the sensitivity of such analysis for dementia diagnostics. So clearly, new EEG biomarker are needed that are signs for early dementia, and deep learning methods and AI is perfectly suitable for analyzing the EEG. The idea here is that an EEG is actually similar to a 2D image where you have the EEG channels versus the time in 2D. And therefore you can use the EEG and apply algorithms such as pattern detection techniques and of course time series analysis. So each of these channels is temporarily linked with a time series analysis, and due to the fixed position on the head, these electrodes are spatially connected, and therefore you can use the advantages of AI and algorithms to analyze the EEG for signs of dementia. And this is actually a very rapidly developing community where we can use the developments in the pattern detection community, which develop for pictures and video, but also the advantages of the communities for speech recognition, which analyze audio and the time series data. However, there is a challenge when you design an AI algorithm for dementia, and this is the small available data sets. Typically, the data sets are in general very small, and you need to combine quite a lot of data sets that are recorded with different EEG hardware. Or since there is no diagnostic standard in the diagnostics of dementia, you also need to combine different diagnostic procedures, and therefore the ground truth is not really given here, or the definition of the ground truth is not the same. And also what is quite interesting is that it is typically a highly unbalanced data set. And you would assume that you now have too many controls and too little dementia EEG data. However, it is actually the other way around because in elderly subjects, EEGs are typically taken in clinics when there is a reason to do so. And this reason is either a hint for an early stage of dementia, or other comorbidities such as a stroke. So either the control groups they have comorbidities, or there are missing EEGs from healthy elderly subjects. We tackle these legs of or these small data sets in using transfer learning, where we designed a model that is actually quite suitable for this task. And our transfer learning pre-training task we defined as a sleep staging algorithm. That sounds odd, but in fact it makes absolutely sense, because the sleep staging for sleep diagnostics, a lot of EEG data is taken, and so we have more than 6,000 subjects on the training data set. And the sleep staging detection is actually very similar to the dementia detection, because it has 5 sleep stages that needs to be detected for the classification tasks, and these sleep stages are highly depending on the frequency domain. As an example here, for the wake sleep stage, you define the model needs to learn to detect eye movements, that is shown here, similar to frontal delta waves in the dementia task, as well as and the posterior alpha rhythm with the 8 Hertz frequency that needs to be detected for the wake stages. That is also very important for the diagnostics of dementia. Also in the N2 sleep stage, there are sleep spindles that are actually rhythmic patterns, very condensed in the EEG, and K complexes that are peak structures, very important for the AI algorithm to learn such patterns in the EEG for the diagnostics of dementia. And most commonly the N3 sleep stage, which is a slow wave sleep stage dominated by the delta activity, which, as you saw before, is also quite important for the diagnostics in dementia. The dementia model itself, in the end, is then used where we use the pre-trained sleep staging model, which is an architecture based on the U-sleep model, a UNet architecture that was increased with 9 levels of stages, and additionally added with a pre-model that adapts the EEG according to the age, as well as adapting the spatial connectivity on the electrodes. For the training, we use the electrodes of the 1020 system with a frequency band filtered between 0.5 and 32 Hertz, and included an artifact cleaning algorithm that is in-house developed, which is especially important to distinguish between eye movements and frontal delta waves. The model input is the raw EEG with additional metadata such as the age or the individual alpha frequency. Once the model is trained, we created a gradient cam explainability method for the biomarker identification. So what we do here is we created these, we use this commonly known explainability method in AI, where this tool highlights the regions within the EEG that were especially important for the outcome of the classification task. So these regions that were of highly interesting to the model. And this method is actually twofold important for this project. During the development phase, it is important for steering the algorithm development. An example is shown here in the bottom. where in a very early stage of the algorithm developments, these explainability methods actually highlighted delta waves in the frontal regions, where we immediately found that these are in fact eye movements, where we have had an issue with eye movements being classified as dementia tasks. And these could immediately then be corrected using the artifact reduction algorithm to have a more uniform data set. In the end, this method is very useful for extracting EEG biomarkers that are then checked by clinicians for relevance in the detection of early onset dementia in the EEG. With this, was a bit early, but with this I will give the microphone to Yama for continuing with the explanation on the data-driven decision support tool and say thank you to the listeners.
Thank you very much, Lucas. Jama is already here. Hello, please come online.
I am. Hi, everyone.
Hey, nice to see you again.
Likewise. So I'm trying to share the, here it is. Okay, sorry.
There's a green button.
Yeah.
If you need sound, don't forget to share the sound as well for your videos. So I can see your screen already.
Okay, and you can also hear me, right?
Yeah, video is also good.
Nice.
So Jama, like mentioned before, is from Symptoma, Austrian-based company. They're doing very nice things. And in a second, you will actually hear how they are contributing to the MindCare project. Very nice to have you here, Jama.
Thanks for the invitation, Christopher. Good. And also, Lucas, thanks for starting, because it's already a good groundwork for the follow-up. So you've already learned a bit about the project itself. And my name is Jama. I'm a medical doctor and founder of Symptoma. Symptoma is a digital health assistant. Our vision is that every patient deserves the right diagnosis and treatment. And our mission to attain this vision is to eliminate the guesswork from medicine by 2030. And what we mean by that is that we want actually to help data-driven decision making, and this project is actually part of that mission. So 1 in 7 diagnoses are misdiagnoses, and each year 1.5 million lives could be saved with the right diagnosis. But what causes misdiagnosis? It's misinformation. So physicians have to consider more than 20,000 diseases at once, and this is more than a single human being can actually handle, even a doctor. So what can we do about it? The medical knowledge has already been published, but it's really hard to retrieve the right information in a timely manner. And there are already great projects out there. So companies have tried to establish so-called symptom checkers since the 1970s. However, the databases were by far too small in order to provide any sufficient accuracy. So we have developed Symptoma, a digital health assistant. Patients and physicians enter symptoms and other disease characteristics, and they answer questions and receive a list of matching causes sorted by probability. And it works even with some kind of free text. That is, I enter, I have to frequently urinate, and it's asking for painful urination, but it also is working with different disease concepts which are not symptoms. Such as in this case, I would enter undercooked eggs, and it would ask about abdominal pain and nausea and suggest salmonella food poisoning. And this is actually unique, or rather unique. It's the only chatbot that is certified as a medical product in the European Union that is actually able to process free text and regard it directly, and then asking for further follow-up questions. And this leads also to because the state of the art, other symptom checkers only have hundreds or thousands of symptoms in the database, and you have to actually choose from their symptoms, from the list of symptoms, in order to get any differential diagnosis. And because we can actually take any input, And if this input is somehow medical related or disease related, you will get an answer. And this actually leads to fun keywords that are possible. The following case I've been presenting since 6 years or 7 years, but it's still up to date, I would say. So for instance, if you enter even Elon Musk as a keyword, it asks for manic behavior. If you enter Donald Trump, it's suggesting short fingers. And if you enter the name of the model, the German model, Heidi Klum, it's asking for weight loss and eating disorder. So probably also not wrong. So we have invested 19 years in research and development and so far established the biggest disease database in the world with about 22,000 diseases and billions of connections to symptoms, risk factors, and disease characteristics. And how we did it is not manually because it's actually impossible, but we processed the medical literature, but not only the medical literature, but also layman literature. So how patients themselves are describing the cases and further training data sets, such as from electronic health records from insurance companies or from hospitals and other training sets, essentially. This led to essentially the highest diagnostic accuracy rates that has been demonstrated several times in studies, such as in this one, comparing 24 different solutions. This study also has been validated by a competitor. And also Pfizer did a study comparing 107 solutions worldwide, especially regarding rare diseases, and concluded Symptoma to be the best one. First of all, because of the diagnostic accuracy, and then also the operational nature, which means that patients can actually enter their symptoms in their own wording. In times of COVID, so in January 2020, we just entered the disease concept COVID-19 to our disease database. So that is the manual part. Everything else is automated. And the technology then was learning from the body of literature on a daily basis in order to differentiate COVID-19 from 22,000 different diseases. And in March 2020 already, we published this study here, first in preprint and then after peer review at Nature Scientific Reports, demonstrating the accuracy rates of Symptoma detecting COVID-19 suspicious cases. We did also a benchmark analysis comparing 12 different solutions on COVID-19 and found varying results, whereas Symptoma was the only one to actually not only say whether COVID-19 is likely or not, but actually to see the likelihood of COVID-19 in the context of 22,000 different diseases or any other disease at all. And also on the right side, the ability to actually utilize 100% of the patient characteristics reported in order to make up the scoring for COVID-19 risks. And also, this study has been confirmed by several competitors, even. And so, how can this help with MindCare? So, MindCare has the idea of early diagnosis, where we combine the biomarkers that the AIT, Lucas just presented it, can actually identify from the EEG recordings, and to combine those biomarkers with any other disease characteristics that we get from the patient. So any symptoms, any risk factors, any laboratory results, anything at all. And this can actually help to make the decision support whether the target disease is likely or not. In addition, we also added a digitalized version of the MOCA test, the Montreal Cognitive Assessment Test. And this is just one part of the story. As I said, other disease characteristics can also be regarded in order to score the likelihood of the target diseases. And this is it from my side, rather quickly because I was talking quite fast, but happy to take any questions afterwards.
Maybe we do Rupert first, and then we take all the questions for you guys
Yes.
at the same time. Works?
Hi.
And Rupert, please come online. So nice to have
Hello.
Rupert Ortner. He's representing g.tec in the project and will show you how we are doing actually the EEG measurements. Rupert, please share your screen. Video is good, sound is good. And I can see your Teams account. Now it's the PowerPoint. Yes. Go to full screen mode.
Yep. So that's not the beginning. Okay.
Looks good. Please go ahead.
Okay. So welcome to everybody from my side. I'm Rupert Ortner from g.tec. So I will present you in these slides the hardware that we have developed specifically for the MindCare project. So we have identified, of course, the requirements that are needed for this kind of project. Quite easily broken down. We wanted to have a battery that lasts for at least a full day of usage in a well-frequented clinical setup. Second, that's quite a generic requirement that applies for all kinds of headsets, that broken electrodes shall be easily exchangeable, at best with plug and play, so can be done very quickly. And of course, the third one is also generic. We always need ease of use, also for lay persons, comfortable headset, also for long-term measurements, and even for sleep measurements, as at least Lucas needs them for his training data, as he showed you before. So to develop this device, we broke down the tasks in several parts, let's say. We developed a lone EEG amplifier fitting the requirements for the project. On the other side, we of course developed the electrodes for the requirements of the software of the project. And of course, also we developed software, but I don't go into details of the software for this project. But of course, we have to have an application programming interface, streaming layer to stream data to the system, and also user interface to use the device and have visualized data quality and so on. And of course, finally, the most important part, maybe the integration of all the single parts into one system. This task is still ongoing. The MindCare project is still ongoing, will end by the end of this year. So let's go back to the 70 steps. How did we tackle the extended time for data acquisition? Also here we have two approaches. On the one side, we worked on new electronics, and this was already presented in a talk yesterday or on Monday, our BCI core technology. Don't know if you see it here in the video, but you see it on the photos. The BCI core technology gives us a small amplifier that can be connected via plug and play to the EEG headset. So this means it's very easy to replace, on the one side, electrodes. If electrodes are broken, you would just take the amplifier unit and put it on another EEG headset. Or on the other side, if the battery is empty, you could also just replace the amplifier unit, take another one, a fully charged one, and just connect it via plug and play via the magnetic holders to the headset. What you see here on the slides, we have, of course, we can use different electrode technologies to connect to these amplifiers, and I will show you the ones we have for the project in a later slide. Here, as an example, you would just see the gold cup electrode. So here you see our hybrid dry or wet electrodes, where you can use them with gel or without gel. Another prototype we developed for extended battery life, also together with other projects, is to use our Nautilus technology and extend the battery itself of the prototype. So what you see here is a prototype that was lasting, or that is lasting for 24 hours recording. And what you see is just we had to make the housing a bit bigger. So on the left side, you would see one of our default G.Nautilus Pro head stages, and on the right side is the extended one. It's a bit bigger, and here it's also a bit higher in size. And of course, also here to exchange the electrodes, it's quite easy. Also via plug and play, we have these strands that you may have already seen, where you can just connect the headset to one of the EEG strands. You can easily change the whole cap and also change the size. Or yeah, if an electrode is broken, you just would take another cap. We validated that. You see here the battery drain over a long time recording to show it's feasible for more than 24 hours. And we see here the recorded battery level. It has some jitter. But you see it started at 100% and went down to 0% just after 28 hours or so. So reaching the goal of having more than 24 hours, quite good. For the electrodes, we developed these electrodes you see here. They are super flat, which means they're also comfortable for sleep recordings, because you can have them in a standard EEG cap, and you can lay on the pillow. They don't hurt because there's not, the size is so small that you will not feel much of it. You see here also in the photo the size. It has about the thickness of a €1 coin, and we can fix this on our either PCI core amplifier or the extended Nautilus. These electrodes for the recording. For the EEG gel, you would just need other kind of gel. If we use our standard G gamma gel, it would dry up for a long time recording. But you could use this Elifix. It's a standard EEG gel that is has less of liquid base, has more fatty base, so it stays conductive for a long time. And one can inject the gel, as with all our standard electrodes, into this hole, and just need a connection between the skin and the small pin here on the EEG electrode. We also validated that data. What you see here was just a standard P300 paradigm run. It's one of our standard PCI approaches we use to validate EEG amplifiers. And you see here 16 channels. Well, for MindCare, we usually use the standard 10, 20, 19 channels setup, but well, in this prototype, we had 16 channels. And we see auditory rogue potential. So this means AEP paradigm, where you have a train of standard beeps and sometimes a so-called odd ball paradigm. You will hear about this maybe in another task. I don't need to go into details, but each odd stimulus would create a P300 peak, positive peak, 300 milliseconds after the stimulus onset, as you can see. Yeah, for example, here, it's a reaction in the brain, signal processing based on this odd stimulus. See here the negative 200 peak that we always have in this event-related potentials. And we also calculated an accuracy plot showing how good we can differentiate between these stimuli and had 100% accuracy in detecting. So this shows us that the signal is quite as expected. We can use it for our PCI experiments, the whole setup, the electrodes and the amplifiers. And that's it. Next steps, as I said, will be to integrate all those parts together into a prototype. And that's the tasks for the next month to finish. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. So there are a couple of questions. Sonic wants to know, how can you enhance the signal to noise ratio from the hardware point of view?
So there are different ways to do that. For example, we often use the active electrode technology, where we have a pre-amplification already at the electrode, which means you don't have the noise that is going onto the cable from the cable into the amplifier. Also with the active electrodes, we don't need this abrasive gel anymore, and mounting is better, faster.
So in general, you can enhance the signal to noise ratio very nicely if you do a lot of oversampling. In our case, in the Nautilus, so we are driving the ADCs much faster than the 250 Hertz that we need. So it's much faster with many megahertz, and then we can actually oversample, average the data. And the square root of the oversampling rate is actually how much you are suppressing the noise. And then very steep anti-aliasing filter is also super important, because this can also remove a lot of noise. And in general, it helps if you settle the sensitivity of the amplifier as low as possible, because then you are also getting less noise into the amplifier system. And you have also seen the Oscar lecture. So with adaptive filtering together with the oversampling, and the very steep anti-aliasing filter helps to improve the signal to noise ratio a lot. Chandra, Rupert is asking, how many channels can you do with the 24 hours battery life?
This measurement was done with 32 channels, where I showed the plot.
I think for the project, you only need the clinical relevant 21 channels. But,
exactly, yes. But
what's this? Please.
The Nautilus technology, we have it with 8, 16, 32 channels, and this prototype was just built for the 32 channels. And yeah,
and what's the sampling frequency you are using?
We can use 250 or 500 Hertz. Here we use 250.
Is there any signal processing inside the unit beside the oversampling and anti-aliasing and Oscar filtering that I already described?
Already a lot, I would say. There's just the referencing also inside. So you can choose different kinds of reference electrodes or common average reference. Yeah.
And of course, the bandpass filtering and the notch filtering.
Right. Yeah.
And then there's a question for Symptoma, Chama. Kavisha is asking about looking into the future with all the capabilities and extensive medical knowledge that you gain from Symptoma, do you think it's possible to achieve something like Paymax from the Disney movie Big Hero 6? So a robot that's programmed with the entire knowledge from Symptoma and who is actually giving the emotional and physical support to a person, a patient. Do you think this can be achieved with current technology or AI and so on?
Yeah, great question. So I'm not a Disney fan, so I'm not aware of the movie, but I am aware of the concept. So generally, I think the domain of expertise of AI is focused on analyzing vast amount of data. And I think this will be utilized as a tool for the actual doctors. The doctors then have to decide how to interpret the output of an AI as they would interpret the output of any other solution, such as an MR, as CAT scan or EEGs analysis, for instance. So for a longer time, I do rather see AI to be used as a tool. However, I think AI can then also be used for remote healthcare or maybe even combined with any investigations. Um, and so I do think that it is going to this direction. The question is whether we, in the end, want to have a person deciding based on the output of AI, or whether we would prefer the AI to do the decisions for us. I think it's rather not a technical or medical question per se, but a rather philosophical question or ethical question. Because for AI, the risk is that they would make less errors, but the errors that they do make are systematic, and so there's a different risk level essentially that we have to look into. So I think it's not a technical or medical question, but rather an ethical one.
So another question is, do you also give guidance what patients should actually do after the diagnosis, or you are purely diagnosing?
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, we would help with which workup this is going to lead to a diagnosis, but then as well to stratify and to say, okay, patients with the same disease or the same disease name probably have a different kind of this disease, different expression, and this means that they would be prone to react differently on the same treatment. And to actually, with data and the more data you would have, you would be able to better classify patients within disease groups and thus predict whether a specific treatment is going to help, yes or no, and whether preventive actions are going to help. So I think it's a stepping stone to the precision medicine.
Okay, sounds very good. Another one is, how do you integrate at Symptoma all this information from EEG biomarkers and also symptom-based data? I guess you are importing in from different scientific papers. So how do you merge this all together for early stage dementia?
Perfect question. So first of all, we gather the data that are disease-related and EEG-related from the scientific literature. And whatever the AIT, for instance, can identify from the EEG signals, we can then combine with the other disease characteristics. But there's another factor as well, because many EEG patterns are not recognized as patterns, and if they are recognized as patterns, they might not be recognized as a pattern relevant to a specific disease. So there's new knowledge that has not been published in the medical literature yet. And I think on the one hand, we can help to apply the current medical knowledge in a better and systematic way, but also we can then help understand diseases and their new disease characteristics, for example, EEG patterns, that we can actually detect new patterns that have not been described in the literature yet.
Lucas, this is more for you from Arthur. He's asking if you could actually generate synthetic data to extend your database that you are having by just considering the statistical properties of the data you already have and then to extend it. Would this be helpful?
That is an excellent question and a question that we think about a lot, especially using generative AI and these emerging tools that allow you to actually generate more complex data. The problem with this is that once you train a generative AI that actually allows you to generate EEG data, you did not add more information, since the information in the EEG is encoded in the AI and it generates out of these information. You need to be very careful that the synthetic data, that your training of the dementia model actually learns something new from this synthetic data. So in fact, first of all, the synthetic data should not dominate the training data set, so it needs to be only cover edge cases or underrepresented cases or enhance your training data set a bit. But in fact, I'm more a fan of training your model on the original data, that allowing you the model to learn from everything it can from these data. But the other question would be where this could be useful is that creating some kind of a foundation model where you train a more general model with all of the EEG data that you have, not related to dementia, but it also includes sleep data, it includes epilepsy data, and it includes healthy data. And so you create, similar to the large language model, a very big model that is able to extract all of the information from an EEG, not only the dementia part, and then you fine tune it for the dementia data. And with this, you can actually leverage information from a much larger data set, not really from synthetic data, but from actual data.
This may be for Chama. So the Symptoma platform is of course already used by thousands of doctors, physicians on a daily basis to make decisions. So how would the workflow look like for the MindCare project, including all the EEG? So who is doing what at which time?
Yeah, good question. We have another milestone this year already, which is integrating Symptoma into the clinical workflow, and it looks like that. Hospital setting, outpatients, clinics. So patients coming to waiting room for an immediate checkup, and first they are being assessed by Symptoma, so they enter why they're here, and Symptoma is asking follow-up questions. So when we then detect that early onset Alzheimer's or dementia is one of the more likely diseases, and if the processes in the hospitals are already set, the hospital can then decide, okay, we have a likely case where an EEG investigation would yield a positive result. So they could then be funneled already to the right investigations, yielding positive test results, such as the EEG, and then also do the mocker test, for instance, and you would be able to actually then confirm the actual diagnosis. So essentially, to answer your question again, by integrating Symptoma into the clinical workflow, we can predict which diseases are most likely, and thus we can also predict which investigations are going to yield a positive result. And this is how you can actually automate a lot of those processes, administrative, but also medical processes.
What's the idea about the EEG acquisition? Is this done in the hospital within 5 minutes, or are you sending patients home for a day and then they come back and you're reading out the data, or it's transmitted to a server? So what's the concept?
So here it is again, if a 24-hour EEG at home is indicated and the infrastructure is ready for that, meaning that they do have the devices, they do have processes in place in order to send patients home with such devices, then the trigger point would be, okay, the disease is likely. The doctor who is consulting the patient also confirms this with other tests such as the mocker test on site, and then the next best step is to actually do the 24-hour EEG at home. Then the process is just in place. So it's really about predicting the diseases and the likelihood of positive findings, and then you can actually have any plug-and-play solution.
Next one is for Lucas. So which EEG features are you extracting and how robust are these features?
So in fact, the EEG features are not really extracted from so visibly, but we train our model to come directly to the conclusion of the classification of the dementia type. So it will output the risk factor of dementia. And not the EEGs. But in fact, with these explainability methods, we are, of course, on the back end analyzing the EEG and looking for what are the features that the model actually learned. And in a follow-up, not in this project, but in a follow-up, we will consult clinicians to visually inspect the EEG for checking these features for possible biomarkers that are then also visibly seen. The thing is, currently the AI model sees the full EEG as a whole concept, where it is not only extracting certain patterns within the EEG that are hinting for dementia, but for example, it could also learn very high-level features such as the functional connectivity that is hard to visualize than in the EEG itself.
And how do you know that these features are describing dementia and not normal aging?
So we can, on the EEG training, we do that with validation, the test data set that where we verify the algorithm, and an unseen data set that it results in the same as the provided ground truth that is actually done by clinicians. But the problem with dementia here is that there are many other diseases that lead to a cognitive decline that leads to a similar EEG result. So in fact, what we are actually showing is that there is a cognitive decline in place and not a full dementia diagnostics that needs to be done by clinicians afterwards.
Maggie wants to know, are you doing the cognitive tests like the mocker test that you showed simultaneously with the EEG, or is it done after each other?
Right after each other. So it is important for the EEG recording that we have a closed eye EEG recording in a resting state. So there should not be too many movements. There should not be too many eye movements, because especially eye movements are problematic in the EEG recording. But of course, we have artifact reduction algorithms in place that encounter these movements as well. However, still, it is the best case to have a resting state closed eye EEG. But the mocker test should be done very closely to the EEG set so that you really have the cognitive test next to each other in a timely manner.
So I guess they are fluctuating and you need a good time window to have good features.
especially over a longer period of time, you can have slightly varying results with cognitive tests. Yes.
Arthur is asking Symptoma. Did you face challenges when you were integrating or trying to integrate it into a clinical workflow?
So generally, integrating into clinical workflows is quite invasive because those workflows are already routine. They are already well practiced. And our achievement was actually that the clinicians, the IT, and the management were actually yearning for this kind of solution by addressing their challenges. So their challenges are, for instance, not having to write the discharge letters, or actually to get a draft of the discharge letters, to automating processes that take a lot of time and also cost a lot for the management. And so by if you were only addressing the misdiagnoses as a challenge, hospitals and doctors would be less prone in order to do so because they are already overwhelmed, and they would perceive this as additional labor. But by actually addressing the needs that they do have during this process, they're actually paying us for into clinical integration and becoming one of our core customers.
Next one is for Rupert. How easy is it actually to get these EEG recordings done at home? I guess a professional physician, nurse, whoever is assembling, and then they go home. And of course, you need high quality data for 24 hours. So how can you realize that?
Well, we have a signal quality indicator that's for laypersons showing 3-scale visualization. If you have bad data that is, well, okayish, but could need some improvement, or good data, it's a color scale, green, yellow, and red, and that's easy also for laypersons. And the montage with the active electrode technology is also quite easy. You need to inject the gel. Of course, you need a very short introduction on how it works, but then it can be done also by laypersons.
And the next one is, how do you control for other factors like depression, medication, whatever they are doing at the same time at home? Maybe Chama, you are the physician.
Yeah, so this is getting, of course, more complicated. So if the diseases are interlinked in terms of being a complication or comorbidity of the target disease, it is feasible to actually interpret the data from such comorbidities and still have the target disease listed as a most likely cause. But as soon as you have disease characteristics from completely different diseases, it is getting more challenging. So how we solve it is by having a tolerance search, so that if you enter 10 symptoms and it might be that those 10 symptoms are from 2 completely different diseases, we still show you like diseases that have a 7 out of 10 symptoms compatibility.
Next one is for Lucas. Did you consider to use other biomarkers or modalities beside EEG, like muscle activity, eye tracking, whatever comes to your mind, behavior, maybe acceleration of different body parts and so on?
It is actually quite interesting to have a multimodal algorithm that analyzes more than the EEG data. However, in this case, the problematic thing is that you need for the training, you need all of these data at the same time with the clinical diagnostics. And in our case, most of the data that originates from a clinic at a dementia ambulance in the clinic, where they typically only record the EEG data. So in our case, most of the training data only includes the EEG data and then the diagnostic procedure. However, there are cognitive tests in place that come with most of the data that we can use.
So thank you very much for the great discussion. So this was a very nice opportunity with so many speakers in the talk to have a nice discussion at the end.